Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 535, written by Chanelnumberseven, The Hot Coffee Secret. I was about 19 years old, and I went to my mom's house because my daughter's dad was dropping her off there to me. It's mutual ground, less complications at the time. My mom wasn't in, but she left the back door open for me, so I went in and made myself a coffee while I waited for everyone. I sat down at the breakfast bar with my coffee and started to scroll on my phone for a little bit, waiting for my drink to cool down and stuff, when the cat came through the cat flap behind me. I turned to greet the kitty and accidentally elbowed my coffee all over the breakfast bar counter. It was dripping onto the floor and forming a puddle, so I quickly ran upstairs to grab a towel. But when I came back down, my cup was exactly where it was before, filled to the top, and no spillage anywhere at all. It was just reset. I think about it at least twice a week, and I still have absolutely no idea how, why, or what even happened. Case notes, file number 535. Right, so here's what happened. The time builders took pity on you and your home, reset that cup of joe back to the last minute. Kind of them, isn't it? No, really, this is the third story I've read on the channel which involves an object being reset back in time. In other cases of this, the object first vanished mysteriously. In theory, there is nothing to say that a liquid couldn't vanish too. Perhaps what is affecting those past objects happened to your liquid too, the coffee, and it was reset back in time a minute or so. Probably not time builders, but whatever that force is that is constantly stealing and sometimes returning our stuff is at play here, probably. It would be funny though, if liquids can vanish too and then return. They wouldn't have to return with the mug or container they were previously held in. So imagine, instead of say spontaneous combustion, we'd have spontaneous soakings. Picture that, a pool of hot coffee appearing right above someone's head. I don't think that's happened yet, but let's just wait and see. Case file number 536, written by cleanbubble. It's a case of Chinese food and mistaken identity. This happened to me a few years back when I was living overseas, and to this day, I've never found a logical explanation for it. I'd been talking to a friend and we agreed to have dinner at my place the following night. Knowing I'm a bad cook, he offered to pick up some takeout on his way. About 6 p.m. the next night, he called me to check if I was okay with the local Chinese place. I was. Their food is amazing. As expected, he arrived about 45 minutes later, and the evening was pretty uneventful. We ate, watched some Netflix, talked a lot about nothing much. A few hours later, he went home. Now here's where crap gets weird. The morning after this, I got a message from him apologizing that he couldn't make it to dinner last night and seeing if I was free tonight instead. My first thought was that he double booked himself, bailed on the other person, and then accidentally messaged me his apology or reschedule message. I called him to let him know what he'd done, and to mock him if I'm completely honest. Cue both of our utter confusion when he explained that yes, he did call me at 6 the previous night, but it wasn't to check what food I wanted, it was to tell me he had a bad headache and was going to sleep it off. At this point, I assumed he's trying to prank me or something, and I get a little pissed off. I went to my rubbish bin and took out a photo of 2 takeout containers and even checked my bank account to confirm I hadn't purchased it myself. But now he thinks I had dinner with someone else instead, and I'm pranking him to pay him back for not coming over. To avoid a full-blown argument, I just put it down to a weird glitch and or me losing my sanity. As I said, the night was uneventful and he seemed completely normal. But if he was actually sleeping off a headache, then who the hell did I have dinner with that night? Bonus file, written by Boogaloey. It's but a dream on fire. This was a while back, but still bothers me to this day. It was 2016 and me, 22, and my husband, 28, were moving into a rental home. I was 6 months pregnant and we were thrilled to move into a nice community since before we had lived in a sketchy part of town. We didn't know much about this rental except that it was in a good school district, a low crime area, and within our budget. Time passed without any problems and soon our son was born. His birth was textbook, and he slept well in the hospital. This all changed when we brought him home. The first night home was awful. Every time we set him in his crib, he screamed. I'm not talking a normal, I'm hungry or need a new diaper cry. A legitimate scream like he was in pain and suffering. My husband and I had to take shifts at night, so one could be with him and the other could sleep. My shift was always second and started around 2 to 3 in the morning. I tried my best to sleep, but shortly after my son's birth, I began having horrible nightmares. I would dream nightly about my son being hurt or needing me and I couldn't get to him. At my 6-week checkup, I told my OBGYN, and she believed I was having postpartum anxiety and prescribed me medicine and recommended I see a counselor. Weeks passed by since starting the medicine and counseling, and I was still having nightmares and my son was still screaming all night long. His pediatrician told us it was solic and that we just needed to wait it out. Everything changed when he turned 3 months old. His screaming continued, but started to be all day instead of just at night. My nightmares became much more specific. One night I dreamed that I walked into my son's room and he was on fire and screaming. Though I was in his room, my feet were stuck inside his doorway. I couldn't move or speak. I could only watch my son screaming in pain. I woke up screaming and hyperventilating. My husband ran into our room and tried to console me. The next few days I could not sleep. I spent most of my days at work and my evenings sitting on my front porch talking to my next door neighbor. She was one of the sweetest old ladies you had ever met, who had lived in this neighborhood since it was originally built in the 70s. I guess she could tell something was wrong and asked me if I was okay. Reluctantly, I told her how my baby had been acting and how I was having horrible nightmares. She was sympathetic and asked me to elaborate. I didn't feel comfortable telling her the details, so I just told her I had dreams about fires in the house. Her face quickly changed from caring and concerned to horrified. Seconds of quiet felt like hours before she spoke again. Do you know what happened at this house? She said. I told her no. She sighed and looked down before grabbing my hands and looking at me. She goes on to tell me that a few years ago, there was a fire at the house due to some faulty wiring done poorly by the landlord. There was a young family with a 3-month-old baby living there, and unfortunately, the baby passed away in the fire. She said the couple moved away and the house was renovated and put up for rent after. I was in shock. I ran inside to my husband holding our baby and told him we needed to leave now. He must have seen the fear in my eyes since he did not ask me to explain myself until we had gotten to the car. I explained what happened in the house and how I felt like my dreams were warnings that we needed to leave before something happened to our baby. Luckily, my brother-in-law lived in the next town over, so we went there. The first night we stayed in this house, our son slept through the night, not a single peep. I checked on him every hour since it was so unusual for him to sleep this well. From then on, apart from our normal baby stuff, my son never screamed again like he did in that house. My husband packed our stuff and we stayed with my brother-in-law until we were able to get out of our lease and rent a new place. I never went back. I will never go back, nor will our son. I just pray for whoever moves in there next. Case file number 537, written by Skinny Minnie, 18. My sister, trapped, sometimes breaks character. So my girlfriend has a young sister who has cerebral palsy and autism. And although she's very smart, she can't really support herself fully and will probably need help and guidance for the rest of her life, which is perfectly okay. She's basically our adopted daughter. My girlfriend taught her sister how to walk and talk and basically everything she knows. One day though, my girlfriend told me how there was 3 instances in her life when her sister basically broke character and told her how she was stuck and couldn't get out and that she was trapped and needed help desperately. Her sister talks in a very specific, kiddish and cutesy way. She's very innocent and to this day, 19 years old, talks to her stuffed animals as if they are real. During the 3 times where she broke character, my girlfriend told me her sister spoke in a certain desperate and adult tone and made a face like she was scared for her life, and literally the next second, her face would change and she would go back to the way she was before. And my girlfriend told me it would be like her sister didn't remember what just happened moments before. To this day, it scares her and makes her wonder what if her sister is trapped in a childlike state, but sometimes has moments of clarity. I'm not sure, but when she told me, I could tell it was serious, and she has never brought it up since then because of how much it creeps her out. Sometimes I get worried that one day she might break character and only I will be around and I won't know what to do. She's very sweet, and we love her just the way she is, but it creeps me out to think that what if her mind was being held hostage by another? Has anybody else had a similar experience?